Hello. Let's test and check and see that everything is stream manager. Okay. Hello, everyone. So, I'm just starting this up. What? One moment. What's going on? Uh, Hi, Phoenix and Tinguish. Sorry about that. I was called away as soon as I started. Oh, am I? Okay, that's bad. Okay. Testing. Okay. So I was. So I didn't know if. Wow, my monitoring is loud. Okay. I didn't know if I would get a ton of people, a ton of new people tuning in, or or just the regulars or what. But I thought if you guys have any questions about um like where we've gone so far, then we could just sort of have those questions here. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Okay. So let me go. I suppose I can sort of kick that off by talking about some um, let's see, comments that I received on the video. I can go to the video itself. So I can jump here. Like, so this, um, I kind of already was responding to this, but this person talking about sort of the in between things, and also um and we can blow that up. How do you zoom in? Sort of in between strategies, and like to me that's part of the fun of figuring this out with noun classes, right? Okay. um the line between herbivores and carnivores could be blurred. Yeah. The so working out what class all of the different types of fae are is definitely going to be an interesting challenge, right? Because currently, the fae that I am imagining are sort of like proto elves, right? They are very humanoid. They look very like humans with pointy ears. They might have some strange features to them that indicate they come from another place. But, mammalian looking fae, right? But things like half plant, half mammalian looking, like, I don't know. I brought up in the video the example of dryads. And in D&D, dryads are plants, right? Probably a clearer one would be treants, because treants are definitely just like tree people. Dryads are kind of like in mythology, I think they're just like sort of people, but in D&D they are like look like plants. Um, but like I mentioned in the comment in my own reply that, oh, well, like the sea is complicated, right? But I think actually the examples that they are giving, sea turtles feasting on a school of jellyfish, coral filtrators like whales, and coral munching fish, have a similar, very much more similar strategy to grass grazers, at least in style, than to predators. Yes, I would say that, but at the same time, um, sea turtles that primarily feed on jellyfish and whales that eat krill through filter feeding, they are still predators. They are still eating. Their primary food source um, is from killing heterotrophs, right? So that doesn't really. Those are not as ambiguous as you might think. Coral munching fish. So by that, I'm thinking they're thinking of parrotfish, which is interesting because my understanding is that parrotfish are actually after algae, and they actually have a function on the reef of cleaning excess algae from the coral, which is actually helping the coral. So that could be an herbivore, or even possibly the class 4 parasite decomposer of that. So actually look up parrotfish. That's something I might be thinking about. Yeah. So feeding. So yeah, most parrotfishes. Okay. Wikipedia outright calls them herbivores. Yeah. But there's the other thing of literally everything eats zooplankton, right? Um, there's detritus in their diet too for an interview. What inspired the inclusion of syllabic fricatives? Well, Tinguish, you know also that we actually killed the syllabic fricatives, right? So what you're talking about is in Middle Fey, let me see, Sylvan notes. Let's see, Middle Fey, we get there. Is it even listed in the phonemes? So these sort of emerge as marginal, but yeah, we have right? The interesting thing is like this: the celestial is bzing, bzing, um, and actually, I think I need to revise that. I think that this is not. It's not this. It is actually properly. Well, actually, I think in the middle phase stage it can be that. Oh gosh, what's going on? I think in middle phase stage it can be that, but it becomes the Z one. Not me being awake for this, but it's definitely not a cultic thing, and it's something that I actually killed later on. And the whole idea of that was I was trying to put a unique spin on like vowel raising, and what happens is we don't get the same kind of vowel raising in the back vowels, but in the front vowels. This is actually in Elderfey an E. And what I was thinking, and it's possibly a bit, it's definitely an unusual sound change. Oh, hi, Madeline. Oh, you're going to a signing. Yes. That would that sounds wonderful, Madeline. I hope that your book is doing really well. Anyway, but so what I have is that This is actually happens when the E vowel is stressed, right? And it happens in some Sinitic and Japonic languages. Okay. Um, but like it there's so much effort in pushing that E further to the periphery that it becomes the Z sound. And it becomes a fricative. Um, but I didn't actually want at least in Dawn and Dusk, I didn't actually want the fricative to remain. Um, I just didn't want that in like those final languages. So what happens is there's a stage after the middle fey where you get an empathetic schwa inserted after that, and it turns it from syllabic to just like a syllable. So that's where you get the pja, right? So it ended up being interesting because like if we bring up the let's just bring up Dawn. Uh, I should have just named those Dawn and Dusk. It's like I have trouble remembering the names. But if we let's go to noun classes, you can see class 3 is where you see it. You end up with this alternation where some of them have an E at the end and some of them have a ja. And that happens in Dusk as well, right? Um, uh, what is the magic word? I have to set up my keyboard. Oh, yeah, I know what apical vowels are. Now, but I don't know what I don't know like the specific languages you're referring to, but in Mandarin, the apical vowels don't get pushed all the way to fricatives. Um, there we go. Finally, jeez. In Dusk, I was just showing you guys. In Dusk, you get the same E and Ja, right? Um, I like this. This is the thing that I call regular irregularity. Um, I don't even know if it counts as regular irregularity because I think that with all the sound changes that happen, that there may not be a clear environment between the two of these. So these like it's splitting these things into like two different classes. Um, we're gonna have to think a little bit at some point about how this manifests in verbs, because if there's not a clear environment, I could see some verbs like switching from one paradigm to the other, right? Oh, okay. So Hitu in southern Ryukyuan is pishku. Pishku. Okay, that's interesting. That makes a lot of sense, Sutton. So what I'm seeing with that with the psku, psku. Now I don't know if it can be stressed, but what I'm seeing there is the combination of that fricativization of the vowel plus the Japonic like devoicing rules, which I do have devoicing rules from historical. I do have devoicing rules from historical aspirates that can affect this these particular vowels, but I think most of the time they just end up being realized as a zh in the end, right? Um, I do like that we ended up with a lot of like variation in our endings while still keeping it small enough that all of our classes kind of get preserved. As we get into the Elvish languages, if I develop them to any degree, probably we're going to end up with the class system collapsing. Bye, Madeline. But anyway, back to what I was saying uh, about that comment. Um, if I can get it back up. So we were talking about parrotfish. I might class parrotfish as herbivores. It's just that because they're not aiming to crunch up live coral. They are biting off bits of probably mostly dead coral material, um, and filtering out the eating the algae. But again, they eat other things, right? So this is the kind of thing I have to think about for every single animal, right? F- fa. Fa is wonderful. Okay. Um so that's the thing is like um it's just a thing that I have to do on a case by case basis. You guys who watch regularly know that I had issues even just like a normal animal, a boar, a wild boar. And I know that boars and pigs are omnivores and have like a similar like potential diet to humans, right? Um so I'm like, but they don't feel like predators to me. They're not like actively hunting usually, right? So I had to talk that out with Biblaridian because like he's my guy that I go to when I have questions about biology. And he was like he looked at it and he's like, well, their strategy is primarily herbivore. And it's just opportunistically they will eat meat. But they can survive on a 100% herbivore diet. Whereas like humans, and you know, with some effort, humans can survive on a 100% plant-based diet, right? We know vegans exist, but generally humans do like hunt and eat meat, and and meat eating is a very like a big part of how our it's important to how our body works. And there's like a lot of predators, we lack certain amino acids that can be derived from eating meat and things like that. So like pigs, definitely they're omnivores, but they skew toward the herbivore side, whereas humans skew toward the predator side. um and there might be some omnivores like I put ravens in decomposers because ravens are well known for, like crows and ravens, because they are well known for eating carrion. um I don't know if that's necessarily the absolute best choice. I could change that in the future, but I feel like it works for me. Um, okay. Okay. Everybody's. Oh yeah, Phoenix. I totally got that. Oh, okay. The Known Dark Senate. What's up? I'm curious. Do you play D&D? So I have played it. Um, I don't. The thing is, because my life is quite busy. Um, I don't get to play it as much as I like. It has been a while. I did like the last time I played actually was as part of Tongues and Runes. We did a um yeah um yeah, it's that's the thing. Let me actually put you on screen so people know what I'm talking about. Um there we go. So the last time I played was actually a long time ago. We did a one shot when I finished Ndakaga, and I played a sorcerer in order to test out like how do my incantations actually work in game, because Ndakaga is the it's draconic, and it's it's the language that I will use for wizards and sorcerers. And so I had a sorcerer. He was level 3. And I had some things. Didn't actually get to test as much as I wanted, but it did feel like having my incantations added to the game. But and we'll probably do another one when I finish Chisfafu, another live actual play. I need to get together like who's going to be on that, but that's going to be a while. Um, the the like I had to kind of rush on Ndakaga because I contacted people too early, and they were like, I was like, yeah, we can plan this for like 6 months out. I'll finish the writing system, then I'll do a few incantations. But they're like, no, let's do this right now in like a month. And I'm like, okay. I had to like switch off, put off doing the writing system, do like what incantations I needed for for the game, and then come back and do the writing system after. And I'm like, I want my language to be more done this time. So I think I'm going to do things differently, and it's going to be a while. But yeah, like at home games, the problem is like I have 3 kids, I have a full-time job on top of this stuff. So and like getting together people is the difficult thing. But I hope to in the future play more as my kids grow up. My eldest daughter is in D&D in like a D&D group. Two gears to get in the right direction. Yeah. Um my my eldest daughter is actually in a D&D group, so she plays more than me right now. So maybe in the future, Daddy can DM for her and her sisters, and that will be a way to have one game that I can guarantee is regular. But anyway, so let's. I want to jump back into this comment because there was something um I didn't address in it in like the follow up. Yeah, definitely. It's a combination of kids have to grow up. I have to find a group. I have to convince my wife to give me like 4 hours every so often to do stuff. Okay, so what is the point of view of users of the language? How are they speaking affected by it? Is there an attempt to categorize, much like I guess the meaning like terrestrial naturalists do? Would it be vibes wise? Um, like see, so a big thing that will help with a lot of this is, I mentioned this in that video, and I've mentioned this on stream many times, is the Fae, as part of like what they are, have perfect knowledge and understanding of living things. So we don't need to, like, the way they view um so they actually, this is like where it's a little bit dangerous for me as a world builder, because they know what role something plays in the ecosystem and what it eats and all of that stuff better than I do. And this is part of how I'm leaning into like the connection with nature in the Fae. That's sort of, I'm emphasizing that because it felt like that was, that jived with what D&D sees the Fae as in a lot of cases, and also with the idea that these are the languages used by druids and rangers. Um, so my idea is that um, that doesn't mean they won't use metaphors. They do use metaphors. Um, they do use a lot of metaphors in some cases, and they do they might divide things differently than a human scientist would in our world, because they're not concerned with the same things. Early on, I said the Fae do not care about cladistics, and there's in-world reasons and out-of-world reasons. In-world, it's like they are just much more concerned with the role in the ecosystem, and they're not super. They know what's related to what, but they don't really focus on it a lot. So there's lots of things like um, the root that means Scanceropterigids, these dinosaurs that had like bat-like membranous wings. That root is also reflected in the words for bats. Um, oh, your parents are concerned about being bored. Okay. Um, Dominion 6? I don't know that. Yeah. The second part of the cladistics thing is like a practical thing. Um, and that is, cladistics gets revised very often. Every like 6 months, you will get some paper that says, "Oh, actually, um, oh, thank you, the known Dark Senate, for the follow, by the way." Um, are you guys hearing that? Okay. Um, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Let this play out for a minute. Somebody's upset. Okay. So, me. What's this Dominion 6? But the thing is, I didn't want to do cladistics because it's very complicated, and also, oh, this is it's a 4X game. I might want to look into that. I do enjoy 4X games once in a while. Um, But anyway, that was the practical reasons for not doing linguistics. Is I just don't want to revise my lexicon and have to be tracking all of the biological literature that to know that, oh, actually now I need to change the word for legless lizards because they're classified a different way now. You know? Uh, yeah, it is something that we're updating. Whereas like the ecological role, the predator prey, the predator herbivore thing, you might occasionally get that um changed. And I am in a little bit of danger because I'm gonna make more words for dinosaurs. I made a one word for a dinosaur that we don't know a whole lot about. And if more fossils come to light, then that there's things that might be need to be revised. But I'm kind of okay with saying, okay, in my world they work like this. um I want to So Tinguish asks a good question. Have you decided how all the D&D languages you want to work on are related or unrelated to each other? So, broad strokes, um when we were talking about bats, that was a thing, cuz I have different words for bats for different diets, but I also in that episode coined that term for that dinosaur Scansiropterigids, like ET, and like there was enough evidence for me to class them as predator, but I don't know. They might find something that makes them like more of a scavenger, and I'm gonna have to be like, I don't know. This is some particular species that's a predator. But anyway, to this question from Tinguish is, how are they related to each other? So we've already established that Ndakaga and the Fey languages are definitely separate families, right? They have totally different proto families. Um, uh, so that's established. The main thing is, and this will help with Juno's question, or what D&D languages are you hoping to cover on the show? So after this, we're starting out with everything that would be used for spellcasting, which is mostly like these extraplanar languages, right? So we've done Draconic, we're doing Sylvan, and we actually kind of has split Sylvan into two different languages. The next ones are Celestial, Infernal, and Abyssal, right? And I have different ideas about how they are related. Um, I do have they are not going to. They're going to be their own family, or they're not going to be related to Fae. Actually, I will say. Um, they will get loan words from Fae, Bila, but that there's a story behind that I'm not gonna talk about right now, right? Um, but the key thing is, like, for most of this, I have sort of ignored default D&D lore, but I stumbled onto some interesting stuff in, I guess this is in Forgotten Realms. The the demons are actually separate, like a separate group from the Celestials and Infernals. So what it is in that default lore, all of the devils were originally celestials, and Asmodeus or Asmodeus, however you pronounce that name. It's not going to be his name in my lore because he'll have an infernal name. But Asmodeus was sent with an army to combat these demons that come from the primordial chaos of the abyss. And they were corrupted by the energies of the demons, and that turned them into the devils. So that is how these three groups come about. So my original plan was to think in terms of like the Christian mythology that this comes out of, and saying, okay, demons and devils are fallen celestials, and yeah, Asmodeus could be like an exonym, right? Yeah. So my original thought was to think of devils and demons as like fallen angel type things, just like in Christian mythology. And in that case, all the languages would be related. But if I am take inspiration from that lore, then I could say, okay, no, the demons are a separate entity from the primordial chaos, and so celestial infernal will be related. Right? Celestial and infernal will be related. However, if the demons come from a separate place, there are a few different ways that they could say. They could have had their own language in the first place, in which case Abyssal would be totally unrelated. They could have not had language and learned it from the Celestials that they were fighting, in which case they would have like a corrupted, chaotic version of Infernal. Or they could have had their own language, but also learned Infernal and formed like a Creole. And thinking of that, I don't think the social conditions for a Creole exactly exist in this paradigm, because they're at odds. They're not beholden to the the devils in any kind of hierarchical relationship. So that's probably not going to happen. But like the idea that they didn't have language at all and adopted it is an idea. I actually, now that I'm talking out loud about it, I'm kind of leaning toward Abyssal being totally unrelated. And I have some interesting ideas about Abyssal. I want to reflect the primordial chaos by like using like partial sound changes and incomplete sound changes, or like randomized sound changes, so that it ends up being extra chaotic. I imagine, and this is really hard to do in conlanging, what I imagine is that like the abyssal language is actually hundreds and hundreds of different variants that are always competing, and you end up with like this gestalt of like forms from this variety and that variety and that variety, and it ends up looking like kind of a mess. Whereas celestial will be very, very regular, which is much easier to do. And infernal will be like celestial is going to be super regular and super like strict, and then infernal is going to be in between. They're influenced by the chaos energies um of the um of the demons of the abyss, and also a little bit by contact with the fae, to make something that's a bit more of a naturalistic language, which which I think actually there will be a reaction among the celestials to that, because the celestials do not like that. So yeah, Juno. So Juno, yeah. Uh, I think it would be fun to have make Abyssal related to Celestial in a the Celestials inflicted them with language, like how Tolkien describes elves giving language to the Ents. Yeah, it's a possibility. I'm a little bit wary of that because I am a little bit wary of the implications of a group of intelligent creatures that did not have language on their own. I think it's less problematic when we're talking about strange, like outer planar beings, because people are much less likely to view them as representations of actual people rather than personifications of ideas. But I'm still a little bit iffy on it. I'm still a little bit iffy on whether I want to do it that way. Um, at the same time, if you just boil out of the primordial chaos and as violence incarnate, what use do you have for language until you encounter other beings that don't operate that way? Tabby does, so could it be didn't have spoken language? I mean, so one way I can run it is my my idea is that the ancestor I my idea is that actually the celestials didn't have language at first either. Um and what the is like the ancestor language of both celestial and infernal was created to communicate with mortals, because in their own realm they live in a realm where abstract ideas are concrete, and they do not need the kinds of abstract communication that we have, right? So it will be like a an in-world conlang that they develop in order to communicate with mortals, and possibly also with fae and all those all the creatures that are not from the outer planes. And that means that they would uh so that if I do it that way with the celestials, I could say the same thing about the demons. um Another benefit of having abyssal be related to the celestial languages is I could keep things ambiguous, which I think a lot of lore likes to do with the demons. Because they're chaos incarnate, um that means that that because they're chaos incarnate, that also means there's a lot of mysteries about who they are, what the structure of their their world is, of what the abyss is. Like, the people refer to, okay, well, it is said that there are 666 levels of the abyss. However, no one really knows how many there actually are, things like that. So having their language be related to celestial could give me an out to say, I don't know where these creatures came from. They could have actually been celestials that ventured out into the primordial chaos and came back changed. Or they could be beings from the primordial chaos or from another universe entirely. And maybe they're a mix of several of those things, right? Uh, Okay, so the so-called language of the angels is not that, but the language of the first humans they spoke to. Um, that would be an interesting angle to go with. The issue is that I am doing all of these first. I'm doing all of these languages first before I go into the prime material plane. Um, I will be venturing into very early Elvish languages pretty soon because I did want the writing system for Chisfafu to actually be an Elvish writing system. I wanted us to say, okay, the Fae didn't invent writing on their own. Instead, there were there was a group of elves that went to the prime material plane and invented civilization. Um, and when they did that, they invented writing, and it got passed a couple of different ways and came back to Fairy to encode Sylvan. So that, but I don't need much for that. I need like maybe 5 sound changes in a couple of different Elven languages and just like enough words to get the phonetic characters out of it, right? So it's not going to be that complicated. Um, so have you considered making Edgelang for Abyssal instead of naturalistic content? I mean, my current plan, given that I have this idea of celestial, like the celestial, the proto celestial language being um engineered, being made to communicate with mortals, means that that's going to be kind of an Edgelang. Um, it will be like in world, it's sort of an Oxlang, right? It's for communication between two groups. But also it will be, my plan is to make it a little bit like Edgelangy, like weirdness, in order to be like, okay, this is what the Celestials think is easy for mortals to speak. Uh, Emphasis on think, because it might turn out to be something that's not all that easy to use. Um, but yeah, I think Celestial will definitely be Edgelangy. I think that I think that the chaotic nature of demons means that Abyssal will be much more naturalistic. In fact, if I can pull it off, I might make it like hyper naturalistic with just tons of irregular forms and crazy suppletions and BS going on. Yeah. As long as it's not Seraphim. Seraphim, what's Seraphim? Is that one of the cursed language? Is that the one cursed language that you have to speak like 3 different biblical languages to even do? Oh, only in transitive sentences like first generation signers. That's a possibility. Is that a thing? Yeah, Babalinguas. Yeah, I remember that. It's not going to be like that. I will make something that is speakable by a human being. Because remember, the entire goal of this whole thing is I want to make spell incantations that you can just read out in your game. So anything that a human can't pronounce at all is counter to that goal. That's not something I'm going to do. Which Seraphim requires you to like have multiple mouths and everything. Yeah. That's interesting. I was thinking actually, so I might actually detail out this proto language much more than I typically do. I was thinking actually, mostly it would be actually um quite simple. I want to do an analytic language because so far, like, Ndakaga is very agglutinating, and Hiswafu is very synthetic. I want to do an isolating language. Not enough conlanguages do much like isolating or analytic languages. Um, and I actually it will be I was actually originally thinking very close to like norm typological norms. So like SVO word order. um it'll be analytic. I was thinking like very little in terms of very like no morphological marking, and a lot of things sort of left understood, like no plural marking, stuff like that. Yeah, the language I'm using for the relay. Yeah, that's good. Thing is, like, conlangers really like charts, really like big charts. So we tend to go for um, languages that generate big charts, which ends up going to like the agglutinative and fusional areas. But um, more analytic languages could be good. Now, this is like the original, and I could say, okay, Celestial is going to be extremely conservative. So they might not go much further from that. Maybe they'll develop a few affixes or grammatical markers that weren't in the original. But like, if Abyssal is related, then Abyssal will take it like just like in some insane direction that doesn't that's hard to make sense of. And then Infernal will have sort of a naturalistic, maybe get into the start of developing some agglutination, right? Take a very natural path in that way. Um, but probably not change all that much. Um, because we are talking about like the Fae. I let the Fae develop in a fairly naturalistic way, even though they live a really long time or possibly are immortal, because I felt like their connection to nature means that they also develop that language in a natural way, even though it's like even through their own weirdness, right? But Celestial, okay, that's okay. Juno, that is excellent. Okay. This is actually the philosophy that I want to follow when I get to Celestial is the Celestial language doesn't evolve. It gets periodic patch notes. You said that as a joke, but that's actually the idea because I want it to be like, okay, Abyssal just goes nuts, just goes absolutely insane. Uh, Infernal starts to follow sort of um a sort of a naturalistic process, but it more still more motivated by like separating themselves from the Celestials than anything else. Um, so it's very slow. It's still kind of conservative. Celestial remains the most conservative, and their changes to their language are basically all deliberate. Either it's like something they find to be the more ideal form, or it's some reaction against they saw something in Infernal and they got pissed off and decided to change something, right? Yeah. Okay. We do not need. We are having fun here. I am not going to. I need to figure out how to get rid of that comment from here. We don't want to. I am not talking about real world angels, which I don't believe in. I'm just talking about D&D here. Um, Celestial is regulated operating system like Windows or Apple. Abyssal is Linux. I'd say maybe Celestial is Mac, and Infernal is Windows, and Abyssal would be would be Abyssal would be Linux maybe. I say it that way because like I feel like Mac tries to keep itself much like cleaner and more direct, whereas Windows is like sort of gets more cruft added to it. Um, a big thing actually, though, in okay, a big thing about like how um I want to develop those is I want to break away from the idea of like D&D alignment stuff a little bit. I do kind of like the idea of the demons representing chaos in a certain way. However, um yeah, the gosh, that kind of threw me off. The idea would be also to question the morality of these celestials, because I think one thing that attracts me about this lore of the demons being an outside threat and then the infernals being those celestials that were sent to be frontline fighters and got corrupted is it reflects back on the morality of the celestials, because the celestials allow this to continue, and then they allow the devils, as they become corrupted, to go and start doing things like stealing souls and all of that stuff, because they are useful in fighting the demons. And I really like that. I like the idea of, okay, maybe the good guys aren't so good, and I have other plans that will also make the good guys maybe not always the good guys, right? Um, the main they the main good thing about the Celestials, and the reason why humanoids will align them with them, is the Celestials have a particular interest in protecting the prime material plane and the people on it. And that is and so you are in better shape if you align yourself with them, but sometimes the means they choose are not actually like good person moves. And there's room for you to question, are they actually good? Are they actually necessary? Are these things that they're doing actually necessary? I like that idea. So anyway, that's very far in the future, but it has actually helped me clarify in my mind what I want from this. Um, so we're gonna have to see. Not much of a D&D person, but I like. Okay, let me highlight that. Not much of a D&D likes, but I like the record of Lodos War Sword World. I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about that. I don't know why I highlighted that, but I will say that that's not what's the uh, oh, it's an anime. Oh, that's interesting. Huh. That might be interesting to check. So it's actually that's interesting. I'm a fan of Freerun and Dungeon Meshi, which are not actual D&D campaigns, but inspired by that. Thank you, Medi Leander, for following. Um, oh, there's a Japanese sword world, so it's a Japanese thing. It only uses 6-sided dice. Oh, that's interesting. I like those. Those are not D&D campaigns, but they're inspired by the D&D world. Um, and it's fascinating to me that, like, it's also like this the same kind of pseudo medieval fantasy world. Um, as you see, but also you see some like Japanese elements being put into it. Um, I will say, since people bring up like other systems and other media, I have always maintained that I am open to adapting my languages to other systems. This kind of project is actually, I mean, it takes work to do it, but there's not any like systematic stuff that I have to do to adapt things, because all I'm doing is I have made these languages, and as long as I can make the world building compatible with the system, then all I have to do is go and write incantations for whatever spells are there. I did a special thing with Draw Steel, where I went through like the elementalist powers. Draw Steel was an interesting problem, it turned out to be, because A couple things. First of all, Matt Colville is a writer, and I don't know. I don't know if he came up with every name himself, but he probably came up with majority of them, and they're all like badass names, like the Flesh, a Crucible, that kind of thing. It's like, oh man, I would love to just like translate that name into Ndakaga to make the 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 incantation. But number one, that would be lazy of me as a writer, and number two, it didn't really fit the vibe of what I wanted the Ndakaga incantations to be, because Ndakaga incantations are very on the nose most of the time. They're very much um like you are declaring the thing that you're doing. Um uh Sylvan might work a little better for that because I want those to be a bit more poetic. The other thing about draw steel is I realized that I was doing it is that draw steel combat is so dynamic and there are so many things going on at once that it's difficult to make it um it's difficult to make incantations that I can credibly believe would be actually that you would actually be able to say while you're doing these things. I make myself stand over there. Exactly. So that is literally a spell. I don't know if maybe some people don't know that. Um, but if I can find that first level uh, let me go looking in my files for that. But that's literally one of my spells kind of kind of um let's go to Nakaga. Okay, leveled spell incantations. If I can find that particular spell, it is there we go. There we go. This is the spell. I don't know if you intentionally referenced this or not, but this is the spell that you have. Jai Gericha means I'm standing there. And with the perfective marker, that means a change of state. Yeah. Misty Step in Ndakaga. In Kiswafu, this will be different. We will have like something like I'm carried through the mist, or when maybe something even more like disconnected from what's actually going on. But in Dakaga, it's literally just I'm standing there now, and then you go there. Um, other things that are like pretty like on the nose are something like um oh that's not one. I'll go back. Are like what the heck? Fire Firebolt. Where's Firebolt? Oh, Firebolt is a cantrip. Um but something like sleep grisasu. It's an imperative. You go to sleep. You do get some things that are a little bit off, like Thunderwave. You I could have gone with like I make thunder or something, but instead I went Dabe agu gritak. Gritak, right? Dabe agu gritak. which means hear my thunder, right? But most of the time, it's like, okay, ikefu ikefu ginsrafube. I dream of a servant, and here dream means to create by magic, right? Um, so it's a mix of there's a mix of like declarative statements of what you are doing and like imperatives in Ndakaga, because I imagine number one, dragons are very direct about what they're doing. Um, and also that style also fits with wizards and sorcerers, which I imagine like wizards and sorcerers, their idea is imposing their will upon the universe, as opposed to like a cleric is not doing that. A cleric is asking their god or the celestials or the infernals to intervene and give them the ability to do this. um and like druids are like drawing on the power of nature and kind of like working with nature to produce an effect. Or but like wizards and sorcerers are like, no, I this is what I do, right? um the magic missile, okay. Insraf if agu apifa gakapinge, right? So I shoot missiles from the dream, and then so my idea with this was that you would actually like count out your missiles, like cha, nyuge, nyugi, de, right? And like direct them as you're counting. Because that's the thing of magic missile is like you get to choose the target of each missile, right? So you shout, if you're casting at one person, you go cha nyugi de, or you could be like looking around the battlefield. You got a bunch of enemies that are low, and you go, okay, cha nyugi de. So yeah, yeah. I need to actually. I think you can get at the highest level. You can get up to 9 missiles. So when I package this up into a book, I'm gonna have to have all of the numbers there. What does missile mean? Oh, that's a good question. So this is in Dakaga. Let's just so missile. There's a word for missile. Now, this is actually a participle. The verb ape means to spit or to vomit, and it's usually the term that dragons will use for their breath weapon. Um, but it gets extended to like fire or shoot something, and this is the passive participle. So it really, you could gloss it as like a shot. It's a thing that's shot, right? Right. So like I use this thing in other places. There's certain kinds of like range spells that use the ape, and then others that use um okay, I need to pull up the cantrip one. That use, let's see, firebolt. Uh Firebolt uses the word is drop, but with a directional marker it means throw. Because dragons really like physiologically can't really throw things, but they can drop things on you. So this drop actually evolved so that it can also mean throw. And so I throw fire. Um um and you could actually replace that with an up or a down. You're never going to cast Firebolt on yourself, so it's not. It doesn't. You don't get the unless you really want to. Yeah, but like so, it really depends less. So, you're talking about like size. It really depends less on the size and more on the method. I feel like Firebolt is more of a thing where you create this ball of fire in your hand and you throw it. Whereas Magic Missile, I think, is like you shoot a thing out of your fingers. And that's how I sort of differentiate using those two terms. Again, like when I get to the Chiswafu, these kinds of distinctions are probably not what I'm going to do. I probably am going to develop some poetic devices and you do much more metaphorical things. Like I was thinking about like what I would do for heat metal. And if that were a wizard spell, which it isn't, I would just say I make this metal hot, right? I make this iron hot or something like that. But I was thinking for for um for like Chiswafu, and we'll get to when once we're like done with those things. I was thinking something like the sun lives within the bad rock or something like that. I don't know, I even know how they refer to metals because like some metals are fine, but there's often this idea that the Fae don't like iron, stuff like that. Yeah, magic missile is described as like a dart. Yeah, it different people interpret it different ways. Yeah, a pseudo conversational tone, like you're essentially asking the material word for favors. That's an interesting thought. Um, I do want to still differentiate it because I think celestial, especially celestial and infernal, maybe abyssal, celestial, infernal, and abyssal are much more about asking asking these otherworldly beings for to do something for you. So I think that they will have incantations that are more styled as like a request, right? Whereas the Sylvan ones, I'm really aiming towards not so much requests, more like sort of flowery ways of describing what you're doing. Um, Now, that might get in the way. I do have to keep in mind that I have to make these plausible to say in combat. Like this is like one of the big things that happened when I was doing Dakuga. I'm actually quite proud of this one. Was I was trying to figure out what to do with shield, because if I say like I make a force field, I dream of a force field or something like that. Well, that's going to be super long. And shield, when do you cast shield? It's when someone is actively about to hit you. So it has to be quick. Um so I'm like, okay, I can't do it that way, but I did come up with a way to say it in one word, 3 syllables, chakude, which literally means don't hit me. And I think that may be where I really got the idea of we can use commands in way even when the spell is not actually a command. It's just like chakude, and that that is how you cast shield, and it's very clear what you're doing. Yeah, block or defend could work too. uh it just happened to be that I have this prohibitive marker, so I can just like, and also Q is one syllable, so we have Chakide. And I'm sad that I'm sad that I never got a shield spell off. The two the two spells that I really wanted to have happen on stream and didn't get to do, partly because I was stupidly trying to conserve resources, was I wanted to do Thunderwave because this so like that's such a cool thing to say, and then Shield Chakide. I think it will be cool when players are playing. Somebody's about to hit them, and they say Chakide, and then there's a shield, and they don't get hit. Um, I think that's actually a cool thing, and that actually goes back to like what I was talking about with Draw Steel, because like Draw Steel has a ton of things like that, and some of them, like, okay, yes, actually, like mechanically, it works similar to what a reaction is in 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 D&D. However, in Draw Steel, you have to think you are doing a main action and a maneuver, both of which could be spells, and you could have this reaction, and the reactions are even tighter sometimes in Draw Steel, because like, okay, Chakide, okay, you see a person hitting you, about to hit you, go Chakide, you have a spell, you have a shield. That's pretty believable. Draw Steel has a spell where you see someone else do a force move on somebody. So the force move could be like they cause someone to teleport, or they pick them up and throw them, or they punch them and they go flying. And you get off this spell to cause an explosion to make them fly further. And I did one for that, but I was thinking in my mind, like, okay, I'm going to do this in case people want it, but I do not believe you would be able to say anything to make that happen, because, like, you have to cast this while someone is actively flying off somewhere. So that's that's a thing about trying to do incantations for Draw Steel, is like some of the powers I'm like, I don't know if I would say anything. Whereas in D&D, like D&D has in the mechanics, some spells require a verbal component. They require you to say something anyway. So I'm figuring out how to make it work. I will say that the ideal kind of game to adapt this kind of thing to it is the quality that D&D has that lets me do this. 6 seconds is a turn. Casters are as fast as rappers. Yeah, yeah. The ideal kind of like spellcasting system is where you have a big list of spells and I can script things out for you. Have one scripted incantation per spell, right? Um, Free form systems, that's not as easy to do. Draw Steel works, but all powers are strictly per class. So I have to go to each class and say, like, what is the also the classes are not really direct analogs for any D&D classes, which is a good thing because it's their own game. They get to define what their game does. Um, uh, uh, but it makes my life harder because I'm like, okay, a lot of elementalists, which is I was going from the elementalists. A lot of elementalists are going to be using Ndakaga because that would work. They would learn magic from dragons and start using the Ndakaga. However, there's a green elementalist, which is much more about like nature and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, that means I would have to go through and do the elementalist incantations in Chiswafu as well. Um, which, okay, I could do. Um, they, some of them, like, I mean, in D&D, clerics are going to need warlocks are going to need like literally every one of them because warlocks can have any kind of patron, um, and like clerics are going to need at least all of the celestial like family. They're going to need celestial, infernal, and abyssal um, incantations. So that's still a thing in D&D too. Um, but it really works. Probably D20 systems are like this. I need to look at some OSR systems and see if I could like adapt things because a lot of them like stem off of classic D&D, and will have those kind of spells. I'm also like I'm also following the development of crows, and I don't think the world building behind crows does not necessarily lend itself to these multiple languages from like known entities because so crows is post-apocalyptic. Magic has destroyed the world, and because of that I feel like after I'm done with all the D&D languages, maybe crows will be out and I'll have to have a look at it, and I might actually make a completely different language that fits into a crow's world, that fits the world building. Because another thing about crows is there are no classes. Anybody can try to cast a spell. So like you get you just find spell books and you cast the spells from them, right? So that it looks like they're going to have a list of spells though that I could script out incantations for, but I would probably want to say, okay, let's make a separate language of magic for a crow's compatible world and then say that. But like, oh, and I've considered Daggerheart too. Daggerheart has the same thing of has the thing of like every class is a combination of two domains, and I don't think there's all that many spells in Daggerheart either. So, no. Warlock who magically learned Abyssal from Patron versus Wizard who studied for decades. We are not the same. Okay. um, but yeah, it's really wild to see. Like, um, but anyway, that's a thing for the future of like, um, my my thing about like I have written all of the incantations for Ndakaga for the whole spell list of wizards, sorcerers, and warlocks. But I need to figure out how to get that published. Meanwhile, we're working on the Sylvan stuff. Um anyway, anybody have other sort of questions or anything? We're kind of this actually was quite successful for me to just like have a I was a little anxious about like is anybody actually gonna like ask me questions. um It's but you guys have delivered. I've got a lot of things to think about, but I don't want to. Can I talk about like the next plans for Kisfafu? Because I do kind of want to share what the plan is here. Okay, let me. So I need to. This is what I have been doing. Right. This is the main thing I need to get done now. Is I need to know everything about dawn and dusk so I can be like ready to do incantations. The next step is develop the start of early elf languages. And um, that will be. And let's talk a little bit about the early world building for that. So the first elves to develop writing will be the sun elves. These are the descendants of the day fae. So there are there are there are descendants there are elves descended from all four of the fae dialects. So elves. So day, they become the sun elves. And so they're the first to develop civilization, predominantly dark skinned. So they will have a range of skin tones, but they live in the sun all the time. So they're mostly darker skinned. Origin of the elvish writing systems. Dawn and dusk will be what when we call wild elves, wood elves, more connected to fairy because the twilight regions are closer to the prime material plane. Ancient elf Egypt. They might actually. I don't necessarily want to say that elves are the origin of all civilization. There may be pristine human civilizations, or there may be it may be that this civilization that the elves create is also populated partially by humans. But that's world building that we can get to later. Um, Adopt writing from the sun elves. and bring it back to. I do actually think, but I did actually think the Sun Elves would arrive in a desert. Um, I won't necessarily style them like with pyramids and all that crap, but dark skinned people living in a desert that build civilization that tracks with my ideas. Um, and to fairy, right? So this is why these two I really need to develop, right? Right? So I need those in order to develop the writing system, because the idea is I would get the base glyphs. They would start with a logography and then develop some kind of phonetic system. Eventually, it will get to an abegida. I think an abegida is what I want to end up with. Um, but we'll have sun elves, and then they pass it on to these wild elves, who will adapt it to their own language, and then pass it back to fairy, and we'll get some weirdness inherited through that. There is also um, the from night. There are the dark elves. Maybe underworld elves. These are the elves of the Underdark. This is not exactly drow. I imagine them being actually pallid complexion, like like they are so removed from the light that they've lost all color. Um, so they are very very like sickly white skin, as opposed to the day elves who are dark skinned. So that's why they're not the drow. Exactly. And then and develop in the underneath underdark. I will find my own name for the underdark. Something like the underneath proto drow. Yeah, I don't think I ever want them to be like purple skinned like in standard D&D though. I want them to be like pallid, like sickly white skin. Um Little contact with the surface elves. And there are reasons why day and night elves left. They left fairy. Their ancestors left fairy to escape something that I will get to in the future. Dawn and dusk are more like incidental migrations out into the prime material plane, um, mixing with humans and things like that. Um, and then and but uh, okay, so Juno. So you said you call it the underground, uh, and you cycling through a dozen names like down below, deep dark, underside, undercroft. Yeah, I'll work on it. I might I might have like an actual night elf name for it. Um, but this they're going to like day is going to have the sun elves are going to have a descendant or like close sister to the day dialect, right? Um, the night elves likewise will be a branch off of night, but I'm not going to actually develop that. Um, right? Um, because at this point, I just want to know that the dark elves exist because they escaped into like the whatever the world underneath the world and live in caves and such. Um, that would be cool. Um, um, and then from there, we need to develop the writing system, and then after that, spell incantations. Unless I decide to do spell incantations earlier, I'm not sure which way direction I want to do. I kind of want to do the writing system and be sure that I have my languages in a solid state before I do spell incantations. Um, but like, and just like last time, I'll do all the cantrips and the first level spells on stream, and then later the other stuff will be off stream, so that I can later like package it into a book if I can ever actually get that done. Um, so Juno, what are you going to go with for the rating system? So my idea, there's a couple of sides to that. I want to have, in contrast to Ndekuga, which was like Ogam based and had very straight lines, I want something more curvy, maybe something similar to a palm leaf script aesthetically. And then with the actual system, I want it to be an Abegida. Because I did an alphabet for Ndekuga. I was kind of forced to go with an alphabet. But I think an Abegida is where I want to go with this one. I'm gonna have to see how that jives. There's It's a little tricky because like Hisfafu is very vowely. There's but it's not as vowely as all that. The day language is very vowely. It's got a lot of vowels. So maybe the Abegida would develop after they transfer it to like the Twilight Elves or Wild Elves or whoever, right? It would enhance the weirdness factor for less inclined people. Maybe. Um, I just haven't done an Abegida before, and I kind of want to develop one. Um, yeah, I think maybe the Sun Elves retain a logography for a very long time, like some kind of a logophonetic system for a long time. And when it gets to the wild elves, they develop it into an Abegida. That's one possibility. Um, uh, we'll see how that evolves. It kind of depends a lot on how the day dialect changes into the Sun Elf dialect. Um, and also, like Dawn and Dusk, remember I originally wanted to have a Koine, right? That work is not going to be thrown out because the Wild Elves and Wood Elves, they are a collection of Dawn and Dusk Elves that will form sort of a Koine among that population. Um, which like will affect how things go. But yeah, it's probably the writing system ultimately an Abugida aesthetic, probably inspired by palm leaf strips. So very curvy. Um, Not so much cursive though. Like palm leaf scripts are not super like cursive-y. I think it's difficult to like do cursive stuff with a needle on a leaf, but the curves themselves are necessary. Um, cursive meaning like as in like connected letters. I don't think there's going to be too much like connected letters. Um, yeah, but the I don't know. It's gonna there's gonna be surprises along the way. There always are. It's the way that I do conlanging is kind of a process of discovery. It's not just me like systematically developing what this language is. A lot of it is like I generate some roots and I look at it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's the word for pig or whatever, right? Um, yeah, cursive tends to be a byproduct of pens. That's what I'm thinking. And like palm leaves, well, no, because Chinese has cursive modes. Chinese has cursive modes that you do with a brush. I think just to specifically the operations that people you do with palm leaves, sometimes they're painted on, but sometimes they are um, etched with a needle and then exposed to something that puts ink into those etchings. And that it's hard to do cursive with that. It doesn't like naturally develop from that. Definitely doesn't happen when you're carving stuff. Yeah. But anyway, I think we are almost at time. If somebody yeah, if somebody has like one more question, I can answer it, but I think I need to be going upstairs in just a little bit. So otherwise, otherwise, this is my plan. We're doing like I realized I jumped to. By the way, I did realize that I jumped to constructions and haven't done like the pronouns and such. So we'll have to go back and get those sorted out. But my thoughts, considering all of the stuff that I want to do. Okay, what's the biggest challenge with publishing everything into a book? So the that's a good question because I have not like figured out anything for that. So I have the incantations. I am working on like okay, I will say I don't even know how to publish an RPG supplement book, right? Am I going to run a Kickstarter or am I just going to put up a PDF on Drive Through RPG? What am I going to how am I going to do that? That is the stuff business stuff that I got to figure out, right? Um but I think at the current point the biggest thing is okay, I have my spell incantations written. I can write up like a layman friendly um, primer that tells you how do you pronounce all the letters and all of that, and how the writing system works, and a little bit of basic grammar so that you know how to like choose which incantation for like multi-target spells and stuff, right? The thing that I need to figure out is how I'm going to get another person to edit my stuff. So, one thing I'm thinking about is that before I even start this process, I need to actually write up proper documentation for Indukaga. Because what I need is I need that documentation written and out, like probably we'll just put it on Fiat Lingua because I don't really feel I need to like sell that part of it. And then once that is sorted out and I have a nice grammar of a Nakaga with a dictionary attached, then I could go and I could find somebody in the community who would be willing to like go through my incantations and make sure my incantations are self-consistent. Because right now, this is the big thing. You can't edit things yourself, but I'm the only person in the world who knows Ndukaga well enough to actually edit my stuff. So that means that I'm gonna miss mistakes in the incantations, and I have no one else to refer to for that. Yeah. Let's get rid of a guy. Yeah. Um, but that's my thought on that. Anyway, it's time for me to go. Thank you all for asking questions. Thank you all for being here, and thank the two people who followed on Twitch and YouTube during this stream. Uh, I'm gonna say thank you for watching and happy conlanging.